Love it.
I was trying to do that, but it was both on Zoom, so you can't do that. You have to decide. So the other chat was on the future of capitalism, so that's also quite important.
Okay, guys. So we are up and running on YouTube as well. Here's the link if you want to share it with your friends and families. Like, hey, I'm on YouTube now. So we've become all YouTubers today. That's awesome.
Subscribe and like up here.
It's actually
Do you have experience with this, Marcus?
Sorry?
To the ones.
I see you have experience with this.
No, not really. Just watching a lot.
All right.
Okay, so I would say we are good to go. Let's get this thing started. So I will take over the screen again.
Okay.
If I might. So yeah, here we are. So thank you for coming. And I hope there will be some more people coming in. But I also do like it. Don't mind if it's more or less cozy. So as I already stated, this meetup will be recorded and streamed live to YouTube. If you have any problems with that, you don't want to have your face anywhere in the internets, please feel free to leave now. There's also a Slack group we started with our last online meetup. So we're having some discussions there before and after the meetups. So just go there on uxandproduct.com/join and be part of our...
Thomas, I feel like I should tell you that the edit window of Google Slides is shared, not the presentation window.
Sure.
Woo!
Sure.
Remote work.
Okay, thanks. Wait a second. Better?
Here we go.
Here we go. Okay, so you can join us on you can join us on Slack, uxandproduct.com/join. This is today's menu. We're having Marcus from Buffer talking about async collaboration, and Anders from UI Patterns talking about the missing link of experimentation. What is it? User insights, of course. We will start with some quick networking breakout session to get this thing started on Miro. And in between, we'll have some Q&As. So feel free to use the chat on Slack and on Zoom in order to post questions regarding the session anytime, and we will pick some up and forward it to the speakers. So in between, we will also have some breakout sessions, so we can have some group discussions about what we have learned. That's it here. So I would like to start with a breakout session, kind of like networking onboarding style, to know a little bit more about you guys. So I've prepared a Miro board here. And I will share the link soon so you can all come and access and edit. What I would like you guys to do is think about your current project and which kind of like movie title this is, right? So in a second, I will share the screen so you can come here. The board is already prepared. You can go here to Google image search. Click here. I recently was asked this question and I picked Ocean's 11. Then we can put it here. So that's mine. So I'm curious about yours. I will pick one or two interesting ones, and then we can talk about it. So there are some smart guys who already are jumping in there. So wait a second. So yeah, please join me here. Boom. Looking forward to see you guys on Miro. Okay, people coming in. Perfect. So here the G in the sidebar is the Google image search. Go there, type in a movie title. Another movie title I had in a project, I will never forget this. It was that one.
Super quick, for those of you who are not signed in to Miro, you might not see the Google icon in the toolbar, but if you tap the 3 dots at the very bottom of the toolbar, there's the Google image search.
Ah, is it hidden?
Thingy.
Ah, okay. Maybe
yeah,
it's
hidden by default.
Okay. Ooh la la. German movies. Interesting. What's that? I love it. I saw that fire.
Are we competing on size? Who's bigger?
No, not the biggest poster will win. Maybe like kind of like equal size. Wall-E. Interesting. This one I've never heard. Müller's Büro. Interesting. The Room. Okay, guys. Olsenbahn. Olsenbahn is kind of like the Danish version of Ocean's 11, kind of.
Exactly.
That's a good one. Yeah.
The Room. Okay. Are we done yet, or does looks like? Okay, I will just start. I'm really interested in this one. So who picked up Fire, the greatest party that never happened? Who was it?
That was mine.
Can you tell like 1-2 sentences about it, if you can?
Yeah, I think it's just something we joked around, joked about at the company where I work, because we're working on this new music streaming service that's going to take over the world, and there's a lot of investor money in there, and everyone's sort of going around and thinking, well, will we be here tomorrow? Is this just something that's hyped, or are we really doing it?
Mm-hmm. And what's about the who's Wall-E actually, and why? Who wants to say something about
that's me actually.
Okay, tell me.
Because there's a lot of legacy that needs to be cleaned up right now, and that seems very fitting.
Okay, I got you. Maybe one last. I mean, of course, the Big Lebowski. Why?
My name is Nicholas, and I'm writing my master thesis. And it's one of them. It's a mess, but I think we'll get through it at some point. So I'm feeling a bit like a detective doing the design. Have to hand it in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So.
Okay.
But in the end, I hope we'll figure it out.
Okay, guys. I mean, thanks for joining and like sharing your work. I don't want to like overdo this. I think it was a nice intro exercise. I just see Anders' face. Anders, you want to say something? Olsenbahn, come on, say something.
Oh no, you had it right. You know, it's working with a team who are weird and but can do awesome stuff, right? In just coming out of nowhere. Like, how do you do that? You know, trying to get, I'm helping a team getting up and running with the experimentation. And you know, there's just some people on the team who couldn't do anything at all, but suddenly they just like, whoa, where did you find that service? And how did you do that? Like, they just surprised me. It's pretty awesome. And then, you know, they're pretty, you know, they're beginners, so they're pretty amateur in a way, but they make stuff happen. It's pretty cool to see.
Okay, I mean, there are only 2 left. So what? Sonnenlerle, who was it? Just one sentence.
That was me.
Yeah.
Ilona. So Sonnenlerle, obviously, because I'm originally from East Germany, and but also because I started a company that challenges the status quo. And we are so successful now that we're being sued by our competitors, that we're being too nice to our customers. So I just thought of this kind of like almost like the police is coming to tell us what we should do and should not be doing. So I kind of like that because we're dancing on the wall saying, hey, we can do this and it's good for people and you can't really do anything about it, but I can see you're annoyed. So maybe.
Oh, nice. So revolution, I like revolution.
Exactly.
And finally, Müller's Büro, I have no clue about it, so this definitely needs some explanation. Who was it and why?
I chose it because, that's sheer irony, the thing. It's somehow a very ironic, it's a comedy, actually, combining like old 1950s US private investigator movies with cities searching for a murder from Vienna, and somehow it's just playing with genres and with expectations, but after all it's just sheer. There's no aim to it. It's just entertainment. So it's mimicking stuff like the last project I just recently successfully handed over to a whole team. It's fake agile, for example. So it's sticking to certain behaviors in order to mimic a style or whatever, to pretend to do something meaningful. In this case, the investigators like user stories tended to be just Jeopardy, not user orientated in their project. And in this movie, they just simply ask meaningless questions, but with a meaningful voice.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And let's go back to our today's menu. So first talk will be from Markus. So I'm very much looking forward to this. We were thinking about like what could be an interesting topic, and I really like the asynchronous collaboration because right now we're on so many meetings, and I have the feeling that with the whole remote work for some companies who are not used to it, this gets more and more even. So I'm looking forward to Markus, who's basically always on remote and can share some of your experiences. Looking forward to that. Please take over, Markus.
Awesome, yeah. Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming. So let me share my screen, or better just Keynote. All right, can you see it now? Just a quick feedback, yes or no?
Now it's there.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I put the products in there just so you all feel comfortable. I'll have some examples of how we developed some products in that way. So yeah, I'll just get straight into it. So when do you all think remote work was first mentioned? And don't say 2020 for coronavirus, because that's not the answer. So maybe if you can use the chat, I can't see the chat right now, but if someone wants to shout a year, that would be good too. Anyone?
1915.
1982.
1982, okay. 80s? Anyone else?
1915.
1915, okay. Okay, wow, that's quite
a
big.
1920s.
Yes.
1920s. Okay, well, my research showed, I had to block this because when you start the screen sharing, some people saw the number. So my research showed this number. Might be wrong, but that's what my research and my network said to me. there was this guy called Jack Niels, a former NASA engineer who wrote this book, The Telecommunication Transportation Trade-off Options for Tomorrow. So at that time in the US, there was a lot of talk around, not driving a lot. There was the Clean Air Act and all those things. And already this guy in 73 kind of developed those different situations how you could work. He talked about, yeah, we all drive into the city of LA, right? What about if people would stay outside and we have like small little hub areas? And then you could go even to C or to D, where basically everyone would just cycle around and work where they're from. So this was 1973. And I had to show this quote, especially right now with all of us working, where he says that we are now at a decision point as a society. We must decide whether the way of life made possible by the automobile since the turn of the century will or can continue, or if we should consider alternate or modified modes of working, communicating, and living. And that's from 73. I think we can just say that right now and it would still hold true, right? So that's just a little story for the beginning. I'm Marcus, as you all probably already know now. I've been working remotely basically my whole professional life since 2011. I started at Buffer. Buffer is kind of a known company in the remote world, and I started there in 2015 as an engineer. But since then, I've been writing, speaking, and also coaching on virtual leadership a lot because since over 3 years, I'm basically managing a fully distributed team there. Don't be surprised that I'm an engineer. I'm an engineering manager, but I'm also wearing the hat of a PM for some time that I work there. So we can chat about certain product things. So I'm not too far out of your comfort zone there. Yeah, I just wanted to start with a quick story of, if you all remember how it is working in an office, right? This is now an engineer, it can be anything. If you're working on a product, on a design, you're very focused on it, right? You think about the problem, you sit there and you start thinking, okay, what if that happens? And then I put this there, like you really start thinking through the problem. It takes you a while to really understand what's going on. And then suddenly a colleague taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, so I just sent you that email. Did you get that? And then you're back to square one, right? We all probably had that feeling at some point. And this is very synchronous. That communication is very synchronous, right? Everyone can just come to you. So how does that look in a remote company that's fully distributed from Australia to the West Coast? It looks something like this, right? You probably know this now because you've been experiencing this also. Just that for us, we're all in different countries, in different time zones. So this, for example, is an all hands meeting where 60 to 70 people kind of get together. This is what it looks like put on a world map. All the colors are all people from Buffer, and the purple ones are from my team. So as you can see, we have someone or people over on the left. But if you look like to the right, there's a small little dip that's Taiwan, and there's also one from my team and in the middle. So yeah, we are fully spread and we can't have any synchronous meetings because we would have someone that needs to wake up in the middle of the night, which we don't want to. So yeah, and that made me think a lot when we kind of ended up in this situation. What is this asynchronous thing? Before I'll show you how we actually work, I'll give you a little bit of theory. I hope you can bear through that. But it's important to at least understand some points of how we ended up being where we are right now. One thing that you'll hear a lot is over communication, right? And I agree. I had on that slide, I had over communication. But I think it's not that you just need to communicate a lot with your peers, but you need to actually exaggerate with the context that you're sharing and communicate that even more. In that way, you should communicate consistently, frequently, and through multiple channels that are available to you, right? That can, for example, look like the default to open communication, right? You should rarely need to ask for something. Like you probably all did the message in Slack of like, hey, Phil, and then you waited until they responded to like say, can we have this meeting? Instead of just writing, hey, Phil, can we have this meeting at 10 a.m.? You also don't miss out on crucial conversations and decisions if everything is open by default, right? Because you can see what's happening. And then transparency, of course, in a team also fosters trust, which some of you might have already heard. So default to transparency is a very important thing in anything that we do. We even have it in our values. So it's something that remote work can't work without. Being open, being in the open, and being transparent. You should also communicate proactively and clearly. So having a bias towards action, right? What I just said about the Slack message. If it's something you can do, just do it. If you can share that context in a message, just share it. Share as much as you can, because no one will say to you, "Oh my God, why did you share so much?" In remote work, in a remote team, that rarely happens. Also set expectations. Know what the people can expect from you in terms of response time. Like, hey, I can only get to this tomorrow, and so on. And then there's various other things, like working with different cultures, which might not be the case for all of you, but working with different cultures, but also, ask versus guest culture in remote work, in communication, in asynchronous communication is very, very important to kind of understand what the difference is. Cool. Also, something that, is kind of helping with the bias towards action is adopting a decision-making model. Never mind what, but decide on something, right? Again, this helps with setting the expectations and also knowing, where you can go to. There's the RACI model, there's the DRY model, the ARPA model. There's probably tons more. Decide on one, and use that. Those are just examples. I don't specifically recommend one. It's always what works best in the company or in your team even. So yeah, what I want to say with this is have a process behind most of your communication if you work, async or remotely, or even now, in those situations. The more clarity you have, the more people know how to do things and how to communicate, the better this will work. Another thing that's kind of very important to me in this asynchronous communication and in this distribution of people across the world is enabling that system to really work well. What do I mean by that? Well, we've probably all seen this one here, right? That's a very old org chart. And I think a lot of companies still use that. They still have an org chart. We do have one. It's just how you treat that org chart, right? So I think that in a remote and especially distributed company, a rigid structure like that doesn't work really well. Why? Because it centralizes authority, right? There's always one person that you have to go through. We've probably all heard about those situations. It also blocks collaboration. When you want to work with the other team, you have to talk to your line manager, and that line manager needs to talk maybe to the other lead, and that lead then asks the other one. So rigid structures like that don't help with collaboration, which is very hurtful in a distributed async team. And there's also, due to that, quite a resistance to change, which is never helpful. So what does our team look like, or how do I treat our team? Well, I think it looks a little bit more like this, right? More of a network. There's, of course, managers. I'm a manager, so there's still people that do manage people, but it doesn't mean that they have all the authority, right? So the authority in a system like that gets decentralized. Engineers can work together. They can just chat to the designer, and the designer figures it out and then, relays the information back to me or to another team. Like, there's a whole lot of cross-pollination of people that are working together. So it really encourages collaboration because, people are connected with each other. When I'm sleeping and the other two people in Taiwan and India are up and, working, they need to figure things out alone without me. And of course, it also creates accountability, which is never a bad thing, having people, being accountable for what they do and feeling kind of that growth moment. So yeah, building an async team culture for me is basically saturating with context. The more you have, the better. Communicate in the open, be proactive and be clear, and also adopt the decision-making model if you can. And then, like the last one is probably a bigger one, but you can try it with your team to see and just connect the people with each other that they can work maybe even without you, All right, speeding through this, I don't know on time because I was a bit worried. Now on to the interesting part. So how do we actually do this when, building products and building apps? I'm leading the mobile team, so you're going to see some of that. Well, first and foremost, probably a question I'm going to answer here for you already, because I always get like, what tools do you use? They're not the important part. I hope I made my point that the processes here are much more important. Those are the ones we use. And especially for the asynchronous part, Slack, works, but it's kind of like, yeah, it's still async, not really. And Zoom clearly is not a synchronous tool. So in my like 6-person team, we rarely use Zoom. More on one-on-one basis, but not as a team. And we use all the rest. I'm going to show 2 quick videos because I wanted to show some like real life examples and didn't want to leave you just with, slides here. I hope it makes sense. If it's boring, just let me know. I'm scrolling basically through a design brief where we collaborate a lot on, and then also through a thread where we communicate updates and statuses for that release. We worked this year, end of last year, beginning of this year, on a new app called Remix. You can all download that. It's free. It's, you know, basically beautifying your Twitter tweets and links into shareable images. So you can check that out. It's a nice little app. So we're working on that. And of course, we had to do it asynchronous, right? So our design brief is basically kind of like almost an HQ paper. There's a lot of other documents that you'll see in there, but this is where the work starts, right? Where the designer starts the research, where kind of start on the concepts, and then daily she updates it with, you know, like, hey, I worked on this, this is the changes, and then people can comment on which you'll see. I'll just let it scroll for a second, and we'll see if that works. I can't kind of forward it here, but kind of outlines the problem. You know, you probably all know about design briefs, so I'm not telling you anything new, but I just wanted to show that further down, how the collaboration starts to happen, and everything is documented. You know, there's nothing that we leave out. We put everything in, the research, you know, the comments, what we think, notes about syncs, you know, like, and now it's starting like a daily update where it's like, oh, this is how other people are sharing, you know, pictures. I think I'm scrolling a bit faster soon, so it's quite a long list here. But yeah, here the design exploration starts, and you can already see the engineers chiming in, right? Like, they just chime in, they see the update, they want to give a feedback on like, hey, this is possible, or hey, I have a question about this, you know, and this goes on and on. And they also go into Figma, where the designs happen in the same way. This is more of like a formal way in the design brief here. And yeah, this is kind of where a lot of the collaboration happens before we actually start developing the app. And this one, I think, is also very interesting when it comes to async, which I'll show and explain also in a second. This is called threads. And this is, we don't have email anymore. So you would consider this maybe an email, basically, probably in your team or company. So what I'm doing here is just like a thread we started when we started developing the app, not on January. This is just the edited note there. But I've basically kept stakeholders in the loop. And you see, sometimes I don't get any response, but on the right side, I can see if people have caught up or seen it. I'll explain that in a few slides, but just look and, you know, be interested. You can also ask questions after. So basically here you see me kind of outlining a few things and also mentioning people, questions to be answered. You see the structure. I'm putting it not just in one text, right? And then people reply on it with their thoughts. They can reply to replies. Another update from me with like next steps. You know, I'm also outlining like that needs to be done. We need this from that team. Few more replies, and then the same thing again. Update from my side. Timeline, next actions, pinging people what they have to do, what we need from them. So you see various updates from me, and not all the time there's a response, which is fine, you know, because I see people have read it and they are aware of what we are doing. So yeah, this is probably, you can't read anything, but you can see the structure, right? Cool. So what is important when you're working in a team like that on a product that you're shipping without any meetings, right? First of all, you probably already noticed in the past few weeks that notifications are kind of, you know, they get you back into work even if you don't want to in the evening, right? So you're responsible, everyone at Buffer is responsible to manage their own downtime. So, you know, kill distractions outside of work. You've probably already done this, but enable do not disturb, move, you know, work and social apps kind of far away on your home screen, and turn the notifications off when you need focus time, even, you know, in your workday. Just basic things that if you work remotely for all your life, that comes kind of very important. Second one is planning. What do I mean by planning? So I've got this thing called My Communication Plan, and it's not copyright, I'm kidding here, but you know, like all those posts that you've seen that I've written, they all, you know, they aren't just written out. I always pre-write them. I prepare for what I want to say, what I need from others. I deliver the message, and then I also listen for feedback. If like someone has a questions, you know, and then I evaluate, is that, you know, something I need to correct or need to figure out. So communication, especially important communication, whether that's for product, for project, for, you know, release, anything that goes to your team or to the whole company needs to be planned for in asynchronous communication. Because as we learned before, you know, you need to be transparent. Are you sharing everything? Is the context there? So all of that needs to be there. Okay. Essentials number 3 is the tool choice. Of course, they do play a role, but they also should adhere to your processes. So for me, the tools, you know, they should foster transparent communication. They shouldn't be tools where it's hard for everyone to see what's going on, right? They shouldn't be just one-on-one chats. It should be first group chats and then maybe one-on-one chats. It should also enable easy collaboration, because that's what we have to do in those tools. And it also should promote, if possible, async workflows. There's a few categories here that I made. The first one is kind of this new category of async tools. I put 3 on there. We are using Threads. My team also used Carrot. We tried Twist a little bit. So those, I classify them as new tools. Probably they're not that new, but for me, they kind of encapsulate this whole async communication thing. What are they doing? Well, what are we doing in those tools? Well, we do high-level discussions. Anything that you do on an email that's longer, we'll do that in there. We make also bigger decisions in there. We communicate big announcements company-wide, or even various groups in Threads. We're also giving in-depth feedback, because you can just easier consume it and write it there, because people then see that you have seen it. Like you can structure your thoughts. It's just easier. Even me as a manager, I already gave feedback in a written form through Threads, right? As you would do with email. And for example, a big thing we do is weekly updates, whether that's my team, what you saw for the project, or whether that's like company. We have like a newsletter every week, and you see what's new, whose birthday is, who's off, and what's happening. So we'll do all of that in those tools, so people can kind of consume it on their own time when they're ready. So why should you consider a tool like that? Well, it's clear and organized communication. You can't do all of that in Slack. You probably all tried. Having thousands of threads and channels, you at some point just lose track of all the back history. So that's just very hard to do. Actions are also more explicit in some of those tools, because you can maybe mention people. I'll show you also afterwards. You can mark things as follow-up and mark things as decisions. And it's also more time zone inclusive if you have a lot of time zones, which we do. So that's just very, very helpful. And you don't come online in Slack and have to scroll back to read what was happening. So yeah, this is kind of, the long form content that I showed before. This is like a mobile product update that I'm sending out to, because we're building apps for various teams, so they know what's going on. This is very, very easy to do in a tool like that, because they all can consume it when they want to. It's not in Slack, lost somewhere. I can also see, as I already showed you in the video, the state of knowledge, how I call it, because I really like this. I know email has sometimes, like has seen and stuff, but this is really cool. You have various states. You see there's some that are caught up. That means everyone has seen everything on that thread. There's people that have seen it, that if you hover over it, it also tells you when, so you know which replies they haven't seen. And then you see also, for example, that Kevin, he will follow up with me or with that thread. So that means if I chat to him, I know that he has something to say about this, or to answer, or to, ask. So that's very helpful in terms of, async communication. It gives me all the context with just one glance. Also clear and proactive, because I can mark it as follow-up and, action bias towards action, because people then will know I have something to say. You can also mark it as a decision, and that gets highlighted overall in the thread overview, and also then on the specific, reply where a decision was made. Very helpful. So you have, various things you can reply to reply, and the 2 things that I mentioned. Tooltips number 2 for Slack, because we do use Slack, of course. That's kind of our office where we log in, and that's basically where we live when we are online. So what do we use Slack for? Well, social conversations, right? Hey, how are you doing? Water cooler questions, fun channels, anything basically happens in there. Also, real-time conversations, they do happen, of course. If you're online with a person at the same time, you do those conversations. We default to open group channels instead of, always just writing DMs, because if I ask a question in a DM, and that could be helpful for someone else, they can't see it. So if I open that question in a channel where everyone is in, it just becomes easier. Also, quick praise and gratitude things happen in there a bunch more. And also not right now messages that maybe don't need to be in threads, because they're just, a 2-liner. And whenever that person comes online, they can, fill me in on that. We also have a Slack agreement, which there's a link down there. You can check it out. I think it's from a year or so ago. Still holds true though. As I said, we use public channels by default. We use our status to share availability. We try to do it. Of course, isn't like necessary all the time. We also thread when we can. So whenever, like we don't want to interrupt any discussions. We also say like, hey, I can't right now, or like, hey, I need this by that time. And we also don't keep checking messages. So you don't have to live in Slack 24/7, as Thomas mentioned at the beginning, like you don't have to live in Zoom 24/7. Like that's not possible. You should probably also need to get work done. There's a few more, so you can check them out there. Just checking the clock. Okay, I'm almost done. Slack emojis, also cool thing. We do them in a mobile channel to differentiate like who should read that. Like Apple is of course iOS, Android is the robot. Is it a bug? Is it something for design? So that's very helpful in a channel where a lot of conversation happens. Also, use to remind me feature, very, very helpful to not lose track of messages. Documentation, I'll just speed through that. We use documentation for like meeting notes, writing down what happened in a meeting, brainstorming, other documentation that's technical, or as you saw, the design brief, evergreen content that lives in Notion. How does the company do, policies around expenses or vacations and all of that stuff, and yeah, or company handbook and guides. What to look out for, sharing settings need to be there, that it's open by default. Structure your thoughts in a clear way, also very, very helpful. And don't take the context away and comment in line. That's always the best, because otherwise people just scroll all over the place and don't know where things are. So yeah, as I told you, there's tons of tools out there, tons and tons and tons of tools. But I think what I always want to say is this holds more true than any tool there is, experiment and question the status quo, how your team is working now, and find what's best for you. Whew. I hope I didn't go too much over. So you can follow me there, and if you have any follow-up, and we can't get to it today. So yeah, thank you.
I'm clapping. We can hear that. It was awesome.
Speedy talk.
Speedy talk and very insightful. Thank you very much. And I was following all those questions. Before we go into this questions, I wanted to just kick it off with a poll. I discussed with Marcus like what should we ask you guys, and the question is basically how many of your meetings in the last month could have been handled async? Just a rough like rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Please answer the poll, and then we are curious about the outcome. So I see people voting now. Oh, it's very
all over the place.
All over the place currently. Yeah, let's see. 60%.
Probably depends also like what everyone gets out of the meeting.
Yeah. So yeah, almost 70% have voted. So last chance, and then I will end the poll and share the results with you guys so you can see the result.
Oh wow, still 50 to 75%. That's a lot.
Yeah. So 50 to 75% say, yeah, our meetings could have been handled async, right? So that's quite a lot. Although the rest it's pretty much distributed.
Yeah. There's still someone saying none, so they might be happy having all the meetings. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. You never know. So let me pick a question from Richard. I think we cannot go through all the questions. Maybe you just pick some and answer them later in the chat. So how do you make sure people keep an overview of all those tools? I mean, which tools to use for what, and how do you migrate a conversation from one to another, and so on. So yeah, how does?
Yeah, good question. Well, we don't use too many. Like it's not too crazy. Like when you join Buffer, the first one, you come into Slack, we use Zoom, and you use Threads. Like those are your natural tools as you would use your office chair in your office. So that's like a general rule. We don't just try to add a tool for the sake of it. We use the tools that the whole company uses, and they are like, I can count them on one hand. The ones I showed you, it's like Threads, Slack, Jira and GitHub maybe for the engineers even, like there isn't much more else that they should use. So I don't think there's a problem with the overview, but the other part was interesting. Where was the question? Migrate conversations. Yeah, that does happen. So if I'm in a conversational, I'll see a conversation that's happening in my team in Slack. And it's kind of, you see the thread status of like 104, messages in that thread. Also like, okay, let's maybe move that over because, it could be more important if we kind of structure our thoughts there and move it there. Or even if it's a 2-message thread where I'm noticing, okay, wow, this is a bigger question we can't answer in here. Let's move that over to thread. So that's generally a very often seen thing that things move from Slack somewhere else. Not the other way around, rarely, but mostly from, a Slack discussion is just, becoming bigger, we'll move it somewhere else. That's, I think, the most common seen thing that I've noticed.
Yeah, and wait a second. There was one from Matthias. How did you get to this process, and what were the most important 3 things that made you implement this process? Have you been part? I mean, you are part of Buffer for a while, so maybe as you joined, it wasn't like that. Yeah,
it wasn't as async as it's now. I mean, it all came in stages because. So my team, when I joined, was mostly Europe and US, so it was all okay. I did my evening calls and we had team syncs. Then we hired someone in Canada who moved back to Taiwan. So we started to think about, okay, we can't do our team call anymore. And then we hired someone in India, so we definitely couldn't do our team call anymore. And we just had to find other ways. I'm not saying that this is all good, especially for the team. We notice like we're missing the personal aspect sometimes. So we're thinking how we can, replace that of like just chatting for 10 minutes and, connecting. But I think it just came in stages and we tried various things. I'm generally, as I said, I experiment a lot with tools and I just try it out. Does it work? No, it doesn't. Okay, next. And I figure out through that experimentation what the process is, right? Like, what do we need? What do I hear? It's basically like doing research with my own team, right? I'll see what they need. Like, hey, I didn't see this message. And then I noticed, oh, okay, so we need to change something in the process. So I think there was a lot of exploration. And I'm not necessarily saying you should do the same process as I do, but figure it out for your team, like go in stages, right? Like try and see what works and what you need. So I don't think there's a blueprint to this.
Definitely not. I think that's the last thing I hate. I hate this when people say, "Oh, we're doing this because Buffer is doing it, right?" So no, that's I think not the right thing. One last question before we go into quick breakout sessions. But we don't want to disturb people with all these open discussions. What is your answer to this kind of attitude? So, did you experience that in the teams?
No, it's I don't know. Maybe that person who said this never worked remotely because you have to be like no one in our like 90-person team has ever said something like that because it needs to be there. People are looking for it, and if you don't read it, you don't. Like in threads, some people have 50 follow-ups or 50 unread messages because it just doesn't belong to them. That's fine, Before that, before we had threads, we had open email, so everyone got basically every email that got CC'd to groups or companies, and you joined on your day one and you had a full inbox. So that was very intimidating why we changed away from this. But no one ever said that, oh, I don't want to see the discussion. They want to have a better system, but they always want the possibility to see what's going on. Like you see when someone walks into an office, right, and chats about something, you see or maybe hear that. We don't have that. So we have to have things out in the open to understand what's going on. Like how I would answer to that person is try to work, collaborate in a fully remote distributed team, and you'll notice that you just have to.
Okay, thank you so much for answering those questions. There are a couple of questions left. What I would like to do now to jump into a breakout session. So I will create like 5 rooms for us people. I will set a timer to 7 minutes, and I will ensure that those rooms will only have a handful of people, so 3 to 4 people. This makes it nicer to discuss, and I think 7 minutes should be fine. So we see ourselves back here in 7 minutes. Marcus is gone. Okay.
Sorry, Richard.
Thomas, you're muted.
Sorry, Richard. Mine.
Oh yeah, Matthias dropped out of the session. Okay, good, good to have you back again. People dropping in from the breakout sessions. It's coming back. It's good. So while everyone is coming back, I would like to introduce Anders to you. So thank you, Marcus, for sharing your insights. Next up will be Anders, talking about the missing link of experimentations. What is it? User insights, of course. There's not much to add to this. Anders, it's your 20 minutes, and afterwards we will also answer some questions. And I think meanwhile, Marcus will probably go through some questions and answer them one-on-one. And Anders, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm pretty excited because this is a brand new talk. So this is the very first time that I'm doing it. So I really hope that it matches the 20 minutes, but I can't guarantee anything. Anyway, so I'm Anders Toxboe. I run a site called uipatterns.com. I've run that since 2007, I think. But what I do for a living is that I am a product discovery coach and trainer. So I help companies kind of bridge the gap between product discovery and product delivery. So delivery is about building the product, scaling it, shipping it. So typically what a Scrum team would do. Where I guess the discovery part is kind of the product owner role, and that role is quite a lot bigger than just one person. So I help teams and figure out how to bridge that gap and make it teamwork, and what kind of work does it actually require to do product discovery. So I'm just going to share my screen here, right there. All right. All right, can you all see it? Oh, am I sharing the wrong one?
Perfect.
I am. No, I think it was, no, it wasn't. Oh,
it was good.
Always have to, was it? I thought I was showing the wrong one. Okay, I'll do it again. All right, so I as a side project for quite some years, and I'm always talking about this. Sorry, the reason why I'm talking about my own products is that I can't really talk about the works of my clients. So I dug up a case to use from my own world, and I created like a series of like brainstorm card decks that will help you in facilitated workshops. The first one was the persuasive patterns, and the second one was the validation patterns. So this is the validation patterns. Is 60 product experiments that you can use to try out and see whether your hypothesis holds true or not. So when we first launched that, we just put up a page, right? And it wasn't really good. It was like really simple, like just whatever we could get away with to just have it out there, right? And the stats were actually pretty terrible. We had a bounce rate of 67%. We're like really focused on just the numbers, right? But we thought we can do better. We can do better than that. So we did what most newbies do, I guess. We went looking, scouting on the web for tips on how to increase our conversion rate and lower that bounce rate and get better numbers, right? And there's so many tips out there, and we just put them all together and just tried a bunch of stuff out, right? But we changed probably too much, but implemented most of what we saw. Man, this list is really long, but we went through this, right? And actually, we put it into a big Excel sheet, and I think more than 90 different experiments, right? We put all that through, implemented it, and our bounce rate, didn't get that much better. But this work took a month, right? Oh my God, right? Why did you just spend a month on just random crap experiments that we found online, right? So we thought, this kind of way of just experimenting our way through and just finding random experiments and just trusting our gut feeling when we prioritize it in terms of what's going to be good and what's going to work better, it turns out it didn't really help us that much. So what we did then was just another approach. So we installed this little Hotjar poll, and suddenly, when people were visiting the site and when they showed exit intent, this would pop up and say, well, so why isn't it for you? Like, tell us why you aren't buying or why you're leaving the page. And we actually got some pretty good answers, right? Stuff that none of these pages have been talking about. Like, so, and it was just different questions, like practical questions. What size are the cards? Like how big is it compared to my hand? And like, is it can I carry it in a suitcase or when I go to work? And what is it that I actually get in this package? And how could you actually use it in the real case world, right? Just really valuable insights just by putting this micro survey up, right? So we had spent so much time on just putting out solutions where we kind of forgot that the best experiments, or at least some of them, are about just finding out about the user, what user wants. So after implementing it, we put a bunch of stuff up. We thought we did pretty good, then we added this thing where people could download a sample, and we got more feedback on a product, and that lifted the conversion rate and so forth. So we did a bunch of other whoops, wrong one, other things. And after 3 months of just reacting on user insights, our stats were so much better, right? Our conversion rate was so much better. So why is it that one source of experiments, all the popular ones that everybody else told us that these are the ones that you should try, why is it that they didn't work? But listening to users, that was the actual thing that worked. We were like dumbstruck, right? But then we realized, let's find out more. So we did more experiments like this. So this is an experiment where everybody, or I think it was every second person who had bought the card deck got this automation email with through Zapier and Gmail, where people received an email as if it was from me, right? So it wasn't looking like a real newsletter. And we just asked, just said, hey, name, I'm thrilled that you got yourself a card deck. Just out of curiosity, how did you find us, right? What made you get them? Because looking at the analytics and all the numbers, we couldn't really see where people came from. It was, we had source and medium, but it was only our own sources. But what was the real story, right? And the good thing was, people answered back, and it provided new opportunities. So again, a new sort of microservice, microsurvey, right? And the good thing was that we could continue the conversation, right? So it wasn't just like a insight that was just dead when it actually arrived. No, we could start a conversation and foster new relationships. So perfect, right? Oh, there's somebody in the chat. Oh yeah, perfect. So great. Next thing is, okay, fine. I know where people get it, find me from, or find the cards from. It was pretty much word of mouth, and it was a lot of about blog posts and stuff. So we did more of that, and it turned out that we could actually increase not only our conversion rate, but also the traffic, the relevant traffic a lot. But I wanted to learn more, so I did another experiment. Just click here. So this is the mail that was then that we replaced the other one, and it's just actually just saying, well, thank you for buying the cards. I'm doing this experiment. So I would actually like to just spend 30 minutes of my time coaching you to get you started using that deck. So of course I spent then some time free that would normally cost them a couple of $1,000. But in the process, I learned about a lot about their world and what kinds of challenges that they were struggling with. So suddenly, you know, I could start addressing those exact problems. I could learn how they express whatever problems they were having, and how, you know, I could learn what they would Google for, because I knew their wording. I knew suddenly their lingo. So, you know, suddenly, you know, I could just optimize not only the sales page, but really also my product. So, and when you click that button, you know, it would set up, go to a Calendly link, and they would book me, sessions with me, right? So actually just doing customer interviews. So this is some of the stuff that I'm teaching, right? When you validate stuff, there are several things that you should validate, right? Is the problem you're trying to solve, is like what kind of problems are users actually having? So if users don't think this is a major problem, your solution probably won't be appealing, right? So this is actually before you have any product to show. And then, you know, are there enough of people to make up a market? You know, some users might agree that it's a problem worth solving, but how many are there? And with what frequency do they have that problem? Can we actually profit from it? And then, you know, does the product you have in mind, does that actually solve the actual problem? So the problem might exist, but your idea, is that actually any good? And finally, are people willing to reach into the wallets and pay for it, right? So these are like the four things, the four pillars I teach people. This is what you actually need to validate. You can, of course, say it in different ways as well. But when I looked at this, and whoops, I could see that, you know, people had, you know, been, and I've been focused on really the right-hand side here on the solution space, right? I was just focused on just browsing all these blog posts to get ideas for what kind of experiments to do. And the only thing I could do was to find out, is that experiment good or bad? And if it was good, then I had no clue why it was good. And it was bad, I had no clue why it was bad. So I actually needed to kind of bridge that gap into the problem space all the time. And so that was actually what I did when I implemented those polls and interviews and offered free coaching samples. You know, then I bridged the gap, so I had frequent customer touch points. And so I could actually validate whatever problems I was having and say, is this the actual, the most important problem that I could solve, right? So my starting point was in the solution space. So this is actually not a new problem. This is when I coach, this is the major problem of all my clients. This is the starting point, you know, because what turns us on as human beings when we do products is realizing, making our idea happen. It's just putting it out to the world, right? So we forget about the problem because we think we have figured it all out, but we forget to, you know, to see, is that actually the same thing that the same problem that people also have. And when you look to the literature, they're all saying this. Like every single one of them are just depicting the same thing. But then, you know, and I'm teaching this, like, why did I forget it, right? But I had it wrong because I had the words, you know, testing and experimentation in my mind. And that is very, you know, solution focused. I'm experimenting with a solution. I'm testing with a solution. And when people say testing, they think about A/B testing and user testing. You know, it implies a solution. And so it's so easy to forget, you know, the user side and the user insight part of that. Because, you know, you have to figure out, why did this happen? Why do people react like they do, right? So when you look at the literature, you know, the double diamond here, I could just start seeing, you know, they actually totally follow this problem, market, product, and willingness to pay. And I could, you know, the problem is that people start with the problem definition, take that for granted instead of questioning it, right? And if I then look at design thinking, same thing, right? It's just poured out into the same thing. And when I've done I did like design sprints and facilitate design thinking workshops, like people they tend to want to start in ideation mode and just forget about listening to experts and finding out about you know, and empathizing with users. Same thing with, you know, with the value proposition canvas, where you have the users on one side. Well, you probably have to turn around, but, you know, same thing. All these models say the exact same thing, and I could go on. You have the IDEO feasibility, desirability, and viability. You have the opportunity solution tree, which is about when are we in business mode, when are we in the customer centric mode, and when are we product centric. I mean, when you lay it out, it's the same thing, right? And so why is it then that I would fall into this? So my question, or my insight to you actually then is, my takeaway is that, research is twofold. One thing is evaluative and one is generative, right? So in order to do any experiments, and everybody says that, you need to experiment early and often and fast. But for that to work, you need to have set up a solid generative discovery phase where you actually talk to real users and get real user insights, right? And the two different kinds of experiments are quite different. They can overlap, but in terms of the solution experiments, it's more like, landing pages and prototypes and making video demos of the final solution, or testing it with the Wizard of Oz experiment, so forth. But when we talk about discovering opportunities, and when I'm talking about discovering opportunities, it's about discovering what kind of problems that users have that we can use to reach our business goal. Then it's about talking to people, customer interviews, stakeholder interviews, partner interviews. It's finding out, going to industry forums, seeing what kind of problems are people trying to solve. It's reading app reviews of your competitor, seeing what are the frustrations of your competitors. Keyword analysis, see what Google is like a mirror of all problems. So people search for problems that they want to solve. You're just searching for keywords on Google Trends. It's just a great way of discovering what's a problem and what's not, and what's a more important problem than others. So the missing link from my part here is of experimentation, and I've been really fond of experimentation. I've been talking about it for years now, is user insights. And this is actually this is not official yet. It will be in some months, but this is why I'm just expanding this validation patterns card deck that I've been doing for some years now, to include a whole bunch of generative research. So we actually just finished that right now. We're going to add a bunch more like discovery experiments as well. I'm not going to say what those are. Some of them were actually mentioned here, or at least on screen. So this is actually like the really sneak preview of what is to come. But the thing is, you have this need to go back and forth and do more than just usability testing. But when you do that, you are really just in solution mode, and you need to jump away from the solution. Don't when you do interviews, don't mention the solution until the very end. The moment you mention the solution that you want feedback on, you have ruined that person's perspective. From that moment on, the person can only answer from your perspective. But what you're interested in is really the perspective of the user. What problem is more important? So you might ask somebody, I have this problem I'm solving. Is that important for you? The person might say, well, yeah, that's quite important. And then the conversation continues. But what's actually quite more important than that is just to find out, is that really the most important problem that you could be working on? So if the user would prioritize what problems you could solve for that person, then chances are that it will probably be another problem that would gain a bigger benefit for them, right? So you prioritize opportunities, customer opportunities, not solutions, not features, right? And because you need this loop back and forth, my suggestion is that you should at least engage with customers every single week. And this might seem like a lot, but when you have this perspective, you won't do long sessions like 2-3 hours. If you do it every single week, it's okay to just do 10 or 15 minutes, right? Because then then if you do, let's say for 3 months, you do 15 minutes interviews every single week. That's pretty much the same as a 3-hour usability study, right? And the added benefit when you do it every single week is that you have the cumulative knowledge, right? So one interview adds on to the next. So you can use the research and the insights you got from the first to the second and the third, right? So it's actually an exponential function of learning, right? And so you get into this co-creation mindset, well, where you're getting research while everything is still messy, like while you're still deciding on how to create value. You haven't got anything on screen. You're not even discussing, not even in thread or wherever you're posting your stuff. This is before, right? So this is when you're deciding, should we go in one direction or the other? And so yeah, you're just getting feedback when you're still deciding on how to create value, right? If you do it at the end of the cycle, when you're about to release something, you'll end up overwhelming yourself because you can't act on it. And then you'll end up only getting like a blue stamp of approval of the solution you intended, and you can't act on anything because your budget is over, right? The conclusion then is, we don't really live in the same reality of our users. We won't know what the real problem is until we've made sure that we come from we have the same set of assumptions and speak the same language. And this is actually the inspiration for this talk, which comes from Philip, one of the organizers of this group. So thank you, Philip. You just you created my topic. So I tried creating a whole talk around your LinkedIn post. Thank you for that. And it really just boils down to, like every problem is a communication problem. And if you don't understand users, then you can't do any valid experiments. And so that's it. So my name is Toxboe. I run this site called UIPanels.com. Get a hold of me if it's interesting to talk more. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it.
I don't know. Is clapping? Do you hear clapping, or does it sound weird? And it's only weird when one is clapping.
I was happy about it.
Never sounds weird.
Nice.
Thanks for the shout out, Anders. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the topic. I had no clue what to talk about. Oops. I'll just, okay, I'm back.
Nice. So I will hand over to Philip now to close the round, because I just got feedback from my wife that my small one is not so easy to handle tonight. Corona times and kids at home, it's a challenge. You probably know that. So Phil will take over now, and I will go into quiet mode and look like if I can watch it downstairs if my small one allows me. Yes. So some questions for Anders, Phil.
All right, then I'm going to go through that. And if you could just make me the host here, then I can also run the breakout sessions afterwards. Cool. Actually, let's see. I think it was mostly me and Thomas asking questions here, but this is a pretty good one. So Thomas remembers Jake Knapp saying that the question that most people had about design sprints was, can we, like if they really want to spend a whole Monday on understanding the problem. And I think when they shortened it from 5 to 4 days, that's where they were cutting a lot of the hours, which Thomas isn't a fan of, and neither am I. What do you think of that?
Of course, I agree. But after working and coaching these clients for quite a while, I can actually see the idea of starting with the solution, because then you have something concrete to start with. And so I see a lot of teams just spending too much time on going nowhere, just not deciding on any direction at all, but just having a bunch of research, and they don't know when to stop. And so I actually I've started, just to say, advise teams, just just get something out there. If whatever you have right now is better than like whatever you created, if that is better than what you have right now, then just put it out there, or at least in like closed beta or something, because then you can start having feedback on that. But it really depends on maturity, because you really need just to be really sharp on vision and desired outcome and so forth to be able to start with empathy, right? And so most teams are actually really weak on defining actual metric outcomes and a good vision you can actually use. So for them, you know, while getting there to that ultimate nirvana, I would say, you know, it's okay to start with solution, but, you know, just skip it as soon as you have something concrete to talk about. But I get why they were doing it, because it's so hard to comprehend when you're not used to it, right? But when you started seeing what it can do, and how much faster you'll progress in terms of building products that is valuable to your customers, it just makes sense to have the empathy thing there, right? And also because, you know, you don't have to deliver half of the stuff you first thought out, so it'll actually clear your pipeline. So you'll have more time to iterate, and I think that's the best part, right? You won't clutter your product with weird stuff that nobody uses. That was just a nice feature on a napkin. You'll have more time, you know, just spending time on iterating on what matters.
Cool. Oh yeah, there's another one coming in. Do we identify and solve problems, or identify and realize potential? Also, someone is saying something in Danish that I can't read. So
yes, okay.
you can look into that.
Just saying thank you, but thank you. I think, you know, customer problems should be trained. I would suggest a process where all the problems you identified, the pain points or whatnot, like desires, wants, pains, and gains, you transform those into what I call opportunities. Right. So the potential, like, what is the potential? It could be from the business perspective, right? But if you have a potential you want to solve from the business perspective, like, how do you solve that? You do that by solving customer problems. And so those are actually opportunities for solving the business problem. Right. So it's a weird connotation. I'm not sure you can say it like that. I actually see problems as potentials, like challenges to be solved. If you're into this, I mean, I really read up on Teresa Torres and her opportunity solution tree. I think the layer that she added was, instead of just having customer problems and solution, then she has another thing called a business outcome. And there's just a nice line down, like going through customer insights before you get to the solution. And I think this is just like brilliant. I think this is really the mark that all the other models miss, actually. It's a bit more complicated when you first get it, because you'll just have a board that's just huge and immense, and it kind of reflects your thinking right now. So if it's too big and too many levels, then it's because you're confused yourself and you haven't prioritized.
Cool. Maybe you could pop the name of the author that you just mentioned into the chat.
Well,
do we have that for reference?
Torres, and she's got a site called producttorg.org. And she has created what is called the opportunity solution tree. So check that out. All
right. Well, I would say let's maybe pop out into breakout sessions once more for 7 minutes. Then, yeah, we get a little bit more time to talk about our thoughts and learnings from Anders' talk. And if you're one of the lucky ones who end up in the breakout room with Anders, you can ask him all your burning questions directly. Then let me just see if this works here. And all right, I think this is officially the last room.
Hello.
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 How low can you go?
All right. Let's see. Do you all have a good conversation in the breakout session?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you interrupted Niklas, who was saying something really smart, I thought.
Oh, damn it.
Well, thank
No
you.
worries. No worries.
Wait, is he here? What's the really smart thing we want to hear?
No, we were
I'm
just
putting
talking
you on the
about.
spot.
No, it's fine. We were just talking about the design sprint, and me and Steven were talking about that. Sometimes it feels like you're not getting enough user research to like say, is this a problem that should be solved? So like a big question could be something like AI. Should we pursue making this form of AI? Well, it might not be a good idea. So like the ethical space of it.
So who's the question for? Is it for me? Oh, sure.
No. It's just something that we were discussing.
Yeah. So okay, I think I have an answer. so I think there are some things are just too big bets for you to be able to get valid or enough feedback on. So I think sometimes you have things that you believe will trigger a set of options in the future. And so you can of course do something to find out whether that is true or not, and do that cheap with experiments. But ultimately it's a bet, right? And it might be a long-term bet. And sometimes you have to kind of make it like a stepping stone analysis. So if we want to end up here, we need to do this, and this before, and that's really capabilities. It doesn't have to be anything related to customers, right? And so sometimes you need to figure out just feasibility assumptions, not necessarily this desirability, but are we able to do these kind of things? Will we actually have these options, right? And that's an experiment in itself. A lot of these experiments that are popular are only about customer insights, but you have also viability. Can we build it, or can we run it with a low cost, right? That's pretty important, as well as making money and getting revenue, right? So typically you want to test customer problems first, but there are several kinds of assumptions, and I think you need to just say this is just a feasibility assumption.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks, Anders, for diving into that as well, and huge thanks to both Anders and Marcus for their talks today. Just 3 last points before we end here. First of all, the next meetups will be on June 18th, which is a Thursday, and on June 30th, which is a Tuesday. And speakers and stuff will land on meetup.com soon. Second point is, if you would like to hang out more between meetups and you're not on our Slack workspace yet, then you should get there. uxandproduct.com/join. Actually, let me just product.com/join. There we go.
Thank you, Nathan.
Nice. And yeah, last but not least, as you know, all of this stuff is provided for free, but Slack costs money. So if you enjoy UX and Product and you would like to leave a little tip, then you can do that on the Eventbrite link that just posted to the chat here. Yeah, everything is highly appreciated, but yeah, we'll keep it free. And I think that would be all there is to say in this very ad hoc moderation session. Thank you all for coming. Have a very lovely evening and a great long weekend, or regular weekend, depending on where I live.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Oh man.